Hello, welcome to Father Dojo. Today we'll be discussing the social and emotional benefits for kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is a fantasy role-playing game. It's a game that I used to play as a kid, thanks to my brother who introduced me to it. And as it turns out, Dungeons and Dragons, also known as D&D, which I'm sure we'll say a lot, are both turning D&D and me, Matt Sloan, are turning 50 years old this year. So that is very exciting for me. I didn't actually know how old D&D was until my guest, who you'll meet in a moment, told me. So as a father, I'm really curious about the ways in which my children, especially, might develop socially and emotionally, because I don't believe there's just one way for all kids. And when I think of my past in D&D, it makes me curious, like, how did that actually help me? So D&D might be in my kids' future. We'll see. Maybe this conversation will help. And joining me for this conversation is Shelly Mazanoble. So Shelly, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Matthew.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a fun topic for me. Let me read your bio to people so they know a bit more about you, and then we can dive in.
Okay.
So Shelly is the senior brand manager at Dungeons and Dragons, award-winning author of 4 books about D&D, and fledging dungeon master. A group of young adventurers at her son's elementary school, much to his embarrassment. I love that.
Yeah.
When not writing about her life as a part-time sorceress, she's spinning yarns about life as a middle-aged, late bloomer parent, her unabashed love of reality TV, and profiles for dogs looking for their forever home. She lives in Seattle with her aforementioned son, husband, and various foster animals. You can follow her writing and her work at shellymazanoble.substack.com, and I'll make sure the link is in my show notes. So Shelly, to dig into this topic, maybe you can tell us about how you first discovered D&D and when you first realized that playing this game could lead to social and emotional benefits.
Yes. Well, I unfortunately did not discover D&D as a kid. I wish that I had. Even my mom, many, many years later, said, "Oh, I really wish we knew about D&D when you were growing up." I mean, I knew it existed, and I thought, well, it's a thing that nerdy boys do, and I probably even weaponized it against them, like, "Oh, you just play D&D, nerd." Maybe, allegedly. I don't know. But then fast forward many years later, and I find myself working for the game's publisher, Wizards of the Coast. I was actually working on our other game, Magic the Gathering, at the time. And again, I knew that those D&D people were somewhere in the building, but it wasn't something I was going to go near. Like Magic is, so much less nerdy, but whatever. D&D, we also had a publishing imprint. We published novels under the D&D umbrella, and we were starting a kids publishing imprint. And I was really interested in publishing as a writer. And so I got a job as a marketing manager on the publishing side, working on the kids' books. Well, now I'm actually sitting next to those D&D people and looking at them like, oh, they all seem really normal. Like I'm actually kind of disappointed. Like nobody's wearing flowing wizard robes. No one has a pointy hat. They're not even like speaking in a different language. They're just being normal people. And it came to someone's attention, my manager, that she's like, "I don't think you've ever played D&D, have you? And here you are trying to market these books to kids and librarians and teachers and parents." I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm sure, I don't have to learn that game. Well, I did. She set me up in a group with 5 other people who were new to D&D, which was very helpful for me. And I very grudgingly sat through the whole creating a character process. I'm like, whatever. But I'm telling you, as soon as that dungeon master handed me, I'll actually show you this little miniature figure of an elf sorceress.
Oh, yeah.
Her name is Astrid Bellagio, named after the Bellagio Casino in Las Vegas, where I had the
most elves are named.
Of course, she's from the Bellagio fortune. He handed her to me, and I was like, "So this is me? This is me. This is the fantasy me." Okay. I went off on an adventure with those 5 other people that didn't know what they were doing. It was just meant to be a one-off game for 2 hours, and it ended up being a D&D campaign for 2.5 years with those same people. Needless to say, we were all blown away, me especially, because I never fancied myself like a fantasy, even someone who liked fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so wrong. Like it, to me, I love being social. I love storytelling. I love being around friends. And this was exactly that. It was
Mm-hmm.
just us telling stories together, unleashing our imagination, never knowing what was going to happen. It was funny. We had so many inside jokes. We had so many like behind the scenes, like you had to be there moments. These people actually became really good friends of mine. I always tell the story, but the guy who played the cleric in that game actually officiated my wedding. Uh, my dad is still not convinced we're actually married. He's like, I don't even know if this is legal. Like, all I know is this guy is like some cleric in D&D. It's legit. He is actually ordained. But it was mind blowing. It was just
Mm-hmm.
so overwhelmingly different than I thought. So I have really spent the last 20 years now or so just convincing people like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you should actually give this game a try too, even if you don't think you're somebody who would gravitate towards it. It is a game for everyone. It really is.
Yeah. This I'm making the assumption, but just to check, it was in person, right?
Yes.
This campaign.
Yep.
Um, and so there's an obvious right away the social emotional benefit being to me of people gathering in a physical space and spending time together
Yeah.
on a shared love or and even like the storytelling, the imagination, it reminds me of just games in general. Like if
Right.
adults got together and played games, as I've experienced now and then, it
Yeah.
feels so good. Um, and then I had assumptions that I wanted to check with you about, like, but is there something else that you think is going on here because of things like role playing?
Yes.
Or yeah, so tell me maybe a little bit more about the benefits you feel are coming
Yeah.
from something like that.
This is a really good question, Matthew, and I have tried very hard to answer this in like a anthropo like, I'm just like coming at it from a different perspective. Like,
Hmm.
why is it that this game has lasted 50 years? Number one, why
Hmm.
is it that people, I would like to ask you this question as well. Somebody who played it as a kid,
Yeah.
like a lot of people, like even if they're not actively playing it, they still have very fond memories of that time
Hmm.
playing it. And if I'm going to ask you like
Yeah.
what your first experience was like with D&D when you were introduced to it, because I'm guessing like a lot of people, you can go right back to those
Hmm.
moments. Like you will have stories about, well, like where you were
Yeah.
and what your first character did, and like that first moment that you actually were successful or rolled a 20 or something on the die. Because
Mm.
what I've learned a lot about is um, the concept of bleed, which is things that happen in game. This is the concept of bleed as it stands in role playing games, but
Mm.
things that happen in a game, like your brain doesn't know, like, this is a fantasy game. This is
Mm.
made up. It's still firing off on all of the emotions that, like, if you and your group of friends just avoided being jumped by, on your way home from a party or something, or you just had like this spectacular, like, running flip through the air and like, roundhouse kick or something, like if you did that in real life and you're doing that in the game, your brain does not know. It's not
Hmm.
always like,
Yeah.
nah, that didn't really happen. So you're still benefiting from those emotions. So if if your friend dives in front of a flaming arrow to save your life,
Hmm.
you kind of like feel that in real life, like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, like you really actually did that for me. And even though like you in real life we work together, just side by side in real life, you knowing that you did this for me in my fantasy life
Hmm.
is going to make our relationship a little bit stronger in real life.
Yeah.
So like really good things you tend to like carry through like the rest of the week. Like, I was so successful in D&D, like you should have seen what I did. But also like sometimes it's sad too. Like we've
Hmm.
lost characters in our D&D game and that's crushed us. And like, so
Hmm.
you take those feelings with you as well. So I just think
Hmm.
it's so powerful, the whole concept of role playing and bleed, that like it does actually impact your memories and your thoughts, and it is so bonding in real life. It
Mm.
really is. And I think the other part is the characters that you create. Like, it's not just like, it can be random, but it's not usually. Like, you're actually like putting some thought into the type of character you want to play, and
Mhm.
their backstory and where they've come from, and it develops as you continue to play. But I've actually talked to a lot of therapists that use D&D specifically in their
Mm.
practice.
Oh, wow.
Like, role playing is, not new to therapy, but
Right.
D&D, like, they're actually like playing D&D and
Mm.
using it as a way to help, either with like social skills development, or
Mhm.
going through PTSD treatments. A lot of therapists will say that you are putting aspects of yourself into your character, even if you don't realize it. That you're
Right.
either very similar to who you are, or you're actually very different, and maybe you're exploring a personality or a person that you want to try to be more like.
Mhm.
And I have noticed that I started off playing characters that were very much me. Like, I am afraid of everything. So I would absolutely like to play a spellcaster that stands all the way in the back. I can be
Oh, yeah.
140 feet away and still like fire a magic missile. Okay. I'm going to
Mhm.
do that from behind this rock. But then I found myself gravitating, actually, after becoming a parent,
Mm.
I started gravitating towards characters with personality. Like, I still love being a spellcaster, but I now am like, I'm just not really going to think about it. I'm just going to like make some decisions, and I'm going to be impetuous, and I'm just going to be a little off the cuff. And I can't tell you, Matthew, how freeing that feels, because every other part of my real life, I feel like, is so controlled. And
Mm.
I'm always thinking, and I'm always overthinking and always
Yeah.
overanalyzing. And it feels so good in D&D just to be like, oh, did I just accidentally let that fireball go? I'm so sorry. Sorry about your like entire village. Very nice people. That was on me. It feels good, Matthew. It really does. So I just think like that combined is like,
Mhm.
it's just very, very powerful. And all
Yeah.
that being said, I really do want to hear about your first
Yeah.
encounter with D&D.
Yeah, and it's funny, as I was listening to you, I know we'll turn the corner towards younger folks too who are going to benefit in another way, and just nice to hear the adult version of that. So my some of my memories are it's mixed. So, and I'll explain why. So when I have a great memory of my friend Steven, who was a dungeon master and was really good, super smart guy who was able to just like, he would look at something and be like, okay, and he was just able to make stories and make them come alive for us. And I definitely have memories of sitting in his house, just feeling engaged. I don't even remember the details now, but I just know that I was engaged and I was transported into this world
Oh,
that felt so
amazing.
fun. And because, life is never perfect as a kid or anytime, um, it was such a pleasure. I just experienced so much pleasure in that. And to have a friend, instead of like a mom or dad provide or a family member, it was just a really nice bonding experience for me in that way.
Yeah.
So for sure, we'll never forget that. The other side I would say is I was a real loner and I didn't have friendships that stuck in middle or high school. So I didn't actually get a chance to play with regularity. But what I did with it was because I recognized how there was something there for me one way or the other. I spent a lot of time making characters and writing their backstories.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so even though I didn't have the chance to play with them in some other way, it was a study to me that I would call now like some kind of archetype study or
Mm-hmm.
self-reflective journaling, or it's just all the stuff that I needed. I needed somewhere to put my energy, and these structures were there. And then lastly, I would say I was definitely gravitating towards characters for one reason or another. Like I think I started with a fighter because I was like, this is nothing to do with me. And
Yeah.
so curious about like violence because I don't experience it in any part of my life. And then I ended up with like Paladin, I think was my favorite
Oh,
because it's like, yeah, I could be a healer. And then
and a fighter.
if I have to fight, I will. But yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Maybe we can say a little bit more about the kids side of this.
Yes.
So, like, you've obviously observed a lot in your role, but also in your life. And yeah, like, what would you say you notice about kids benefiting?
So I first learned about kids and D&D through a teacher named Cade Wells. Cade Wells was a guest on the official D&D podcast called Dragon Talk, where my co-host Greg Tito and I interviewed him. And again, this was like a decade ago. And Cade at the time was working in a Title I school outside of Houston. And his words, like it was a rough environment. And Cade is a lifelong D&D player. He discovered D&D as a kid. And in his words, he says, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for D&D. D&D has literally saved my life. Like it gave him an escape when he needed it. It gave him a purpose. It gave him an outlet. It helped find friendships for him. So he's noticed an opportunity to try to give that back to the kids that he was working with. He actually used D&D as an intervention tool in the school. And he started to immediately see results from that. He actually was seeing kids that were completely disengaged in class through like some really sad backgrounds. He started to see them perk up in D&D. He started to see them actually engage with other students. He would find them, their teachers would say, like, I don't know what's happening in your club, but all of a sudden this kid has notebooks filled with words. Like this kid doesn't write, this kid doesn't read. And yet, why are these kids all showing up at the library? Like, why are they now taking out books about mythology or about, dragon lore, or things like that?
Yeah.
It was having a profound effect on the lives of these students. And he eventually started weaving D&D into his English classes, and again saw like test scores shoot up in his class, but like it didn't, not in the other classes. And not to say like they weren't also doing fine, but his classes were doing really well, like to the point where like the district was like, what is going on in Mr. Wells's class? Like we need to know. So he has spent 10 years also of just, trying to spread the word about D&D and education and help other teachers incorporate it into their classrooms. Well, I got just hugely inspired by this whole idea of, wow, like D&D as an education tool. And like really, it wasn't so much just like, well, it can also make math fun because you have to add up your dice rolls. And it's like, you want to know how much damage you just did? You got to add it up. Or, I love the idea of kids being inspired to read, because around the time that D&D really sticks, like this 8, 9, 10, 11 is also a time when reading, especially for boys, tends to dip.
Yep.
But fantasy is, a lot of them do gravitate towards fantasy. This is a great way to keep them invested in reading and writing as well. But what I loved was the idea of these kids developing all of the soft skills like empathy and inclusion and celebrating diversity and collaboration and working together and the friendships and all that. So I spent a lot of time through my day job helping teachers create very turnkey resources for teachers to bring D&D into their classroom. And while many of them know, yes, this is great, I want it. I don't know how to play, but I want it. So we have to, try to lower those barriers. But, helping people start D&D clubs in their schools, just making that easy, giving them curriculum that's inspired by D&D, going to conventions and conferences where teachers and librarians and other educators gather to talk about the benefits of D&D. Honestly, it's not just the most fun part of my job. It's literally the easiest. Like, don't tell my boss. Like, it's such an easy sell. Like, I just like go to these conventions and they're like, we love D&D. Yeah, already got a club. I'm like, cool, my job is done. Thanks. Yep. But I actually am so convincing, Matthew, that I actually convinced myself to start a D&D club at my son's elementary school. As mentioned, he is mortified that I would actually do it. It's not just me, it's his dad too.
Oh, wow.
So we both, I kind of just forced my husband, like, you have to be a dungeon master. Like, but my husband grew up playing D&D, and he had a much different experience in that he had to hide it. It wasn't cool in the 80s to play D&D. And he's like, we used to go to the library and put our players' handbooks like in other books so nobody knew what we were reading.
Well, the kid next to him has like pornography.
I know, it's like that's like so much more accepted than the player's handbook, but okay. But so it was only us as the dungeon master, so we could only let like 12 kids into this club, but we were like, hopefully we get 3 that want to participate. Matthew, when the signups opened for the after school enrichment stuff, D&D club sold out in 3 minutes.
Whoa.
This is you could play ultimate frisbee. You could join the Lego club or robotics or learn Japanese or hip hop dance. No, they all wanted D&D.
Wow.
Like we had a huge wait list. So I scampered to find like another dungeon master. But again, we could only really have like 14 kids tops.
Yeah.
Before it became unruly. And I was so nervous because I'm not a good dungeon master. I don't think I am. I'm just like, ugh.
Well, not with that attitude.
I know, right? Like that's the first thing you should learn in D&D is confidence. But I was scared to death because I am like the portal to this world for these kids. You know, like I feel like if I mess this up, then they're gonna not like D&D and they're not gonna reap any of these benefits. It's all on me. But it doesn't matter. It turns out like just playing D&D with kids is as close to real life magic as you will ever find in your life. Like it's part of us where Bart and I, my husband, were like, are they gonna like this? And everything is online for them. Everything is like YouTube shorts and like instant gratification and bored. So I'm just gonna scroll up. Who cares? But like, you know, it's Snapchat, it's this, it's that. What are they gonna get out of D&D? But I'm telling you, they sit down at the table, you utter the words collaborative storytelling game. They realize like you have to work together. We're not against each other. Nobody's playing it. They're like, oh, all right. Okay, I can get behind that. And then you're playing a hero, and these are the types of heroes that you can be. What do you want to do? It's like their whole worlds just crack open. Like we have given them an opportunity to not just like unleash their imagination, but they get to do it in the safe space. There is like this amazing amount of self-discovery that can happen at the table because it's like scary as an 11-year-old to like try to break out of the norm and like try to be someone new that's, you know, a little bit different, but you want to, but you can do that in D&D because it's celebrated in D&D to do that. And you don't have to be afraid to try something and fail because these kids love it when they roll low on a die. Like if they roll a 1, they're like, okay, let me tell you what just happened. Like they will demonstrate how they like fell on their face when they were trying to fire an arrow from their bow, or like, oh, it accidentally like hit me in the face. Did I take damage? Like they're really also excited about taking damage because that really surprised me. But if there's a monster and they're like, oh, over here, like trying to get the monster to hit them, they get really mad if I don't roll high enough to hit them, or if I miss, or it only does like 3 damage, and they won't heal. I'm like, I know you have a healing potion. I am a mother. I'm a dungeon master, but I am a mother. And I know you have a healing potion in that backpack. Get it out. And they're like, no, I'm fine. It's cool. Okay, whatever. Okay. The fact that they all wanted to be hit and take damage and then walk around injured makes me realize that I think they just want to feel a little danger, knowing that it's in a very safe, controlled space. Like we do have healing potions, and we're obviously not going to let your character die. But what does it feel like to take this risk, to try to do something to like, oh, like, I got a little blood on me, you know? It's very safe for them, and it helps boost their confidence because they're taking risks and they're trying all sorts of new things. But the creativity that they exhibit at the table is wild. Like they have equipment. Like they will have a rope, they will have a grappling hook, they will have rations. They don't care. Like they just look around wherever they are to try to find things that they can make their own weapons with. Like the cleric had a ring. It was like a holy, like, and they're like, what are we going to do with a ring? Well, one of them said, I know, let's tie it to the end of this rope and then we'll swing it around our heads and then we'll hit the monster with that thing. Great. So they just go, it's just like very inspiring to watch how they approach challenges and solutions. And I think one of the biggest things that they also get is empathy, which
Mm.
is so important, and it's so hard to teach empathy. But by its very nature, in D&D, you are literally walking in someone else's shoes.
Mm.
A person that you made, walking through a world that is different from your own. You are interacting with people who are different, and you
Mhm.
can't help but feel, oh, this is what it feels like to be an outsider, or this is what it feels like to, not to be misunderstood. Or they just get a lot of different perspectives, and you
Mhm.
can bake a lot of that stuff into the game as well when you're playing with kids. Like, I, even as a dungeon master who's not as experienced as,
There
say,
you
I
go. There you
am,
go. I hear that.
and as it turns out, I am actually a pretty good dungeon master. But you can actually bake some of that in if you are trying to,
Mhm.
like, have a teachable moment. But really, the best part is they have no idea that they're
What
benefiting from any of this.
that baking in, can you give me an example of what that might look like if you were doing a teachable moment?
So if say that there are the occasional kids who don't get the collaboration part right away, like they're still
Mhm.
trying to be competitive or trying to, and it can be a big buzzkill for the kids that are excited to be just working together.
Yeah.
So I did have one kid that was always trying to split the party, which is like the cardinal rule in D&D, never split the party.
As in like pathways, you guys go over there,
Yeah,
we'll
he's
go over
just like,
here.
"I'm not
Yeah.
gonna do that." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Here's the quest. The party has accepted the quest. We
Yeah.
need you to be successful, and yet you're constantly going
Mm.
off on your own." Well, okay, you wanna go do your own thing, then I had no choice but to make that character run up against an opponent because he's off in the woods now. He's
Mhm.
like finding his own adventure, and he came up against an opponent that there was no way he could actually be successful against because he didn't have the rest of his party. And I think it was
Mhm.
actually a troll, I think. And the
Mhm.
troll even said, "Oh, like, I don't typically see adventurers wandering by themselves in these woods. You must have friends nearby." And he was like, "No, I actually don't." Um, so he got roughed up a little. Like,
Yeah.
he got scared, and he really wanted to fight. He was one of those kids that really loved the combat aspect.
Mm.
Like, dude, you're not even like doing damage to this guy. You're
Mhm.
just making him angry. And so even he was like, "Well, this isn't fun without like a wizard who can cast a flaming spear at this guy, and
Mhm.
without my fighter who's going to be able to, hit him with a greatsword or whatever." It's like, it's not that fun when it's just me. Well, it's not. So maybe get back with the party at all. So maybe, like, there's that example. I do know that
Yeah.
therapists are much more creative and experienced
Mm.
in, like, I'll give you an example from a therapy point of view.
And therapists work with, I assume, groups, not
Yeah,
just one-on-one.
they
Okay.
do groups. Actually, this is one of my favorite stories. A therapist by the name of Dr. Megan Connell. She's amazing. You can find her all over the socials. But she had a group of girls, tween and young teen girls, and she and her practice was teaching, like, self confidence
Mhm.
and boundaries. It's really hard for girls to not be pleasers, and it's
Mhm.
really hard for them to say no to things.
Mhm.
So she did a lot of very um, intentional challenges in her games that will actually help the girls stand up for each other.
Mhm.
They had a friend that was actually in a bad relationship, and there was red flags all around, but the friend couldn't see it. The friend was actually played by another therapist, an adult, and the girls intervened in, like, ways to try to help her
The
see
relationship was bad in the game.
in the game.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. The relationship was happening in the game. I think he
Yeah.
was like a bad dragon, or
Okay.
like a secret identity as a dragon or something. And they were like, "Oh, she can't see what's happening right
Oh,
before
yeah.
her." So, but it was teaching them
Yeah.
how to recognize red flags as well,
Mhm.
because they were watching an interaction play out between this bad dragon and their friend,
Mhm.
and actually they were learning, like, well, how can we approach this? Like, what are some tactics to help this person, see what's really going on here?
Mhm.
And she said one of the best things that came from that was they were friends, like learning how important female friendship really is, and like and not competing with each other and standing up for each other. We actually have a kid in our D&D club right now who's has selective mutism. And well, this D&D is a very talky game. So it's rooted in anxiety, and it's like they're not always comfortable speaking.
Yeah.
Well, so I, worked with her parents. I'm like, well, how do you recommend I approach things? Because again, like you are asked to tell me what your character is doing in this moment. And they said either or questions, like just, hey, do you want to run towards the baby dragon or do you want to walk away? Like things like that. Well, there was a challenge in the adventure that we were running in which it was a riddle, and the players not only had to solve the riddle, but they had to translate their answer into Draconic, which is the language of dragons. And earlier in the adventure, I had given them a handout that in game, it was like it came from their quest giver and was like, you might need this. And it was actually like different translations of words in Draconic. So they had to solve the puzzle. She was the first one to solve it. And then she was the one who remembered the handout. And so she started rifling through papers and I saw her, like looking like for words. And then I'm telling you, as clear as day, she said the answer in Draconic. Like she in like this magical, non-existent language. She was like, I can't even remember what the word is now, but she said it. I didn't ask her. I just, I asked the whole party. I didn't want to like pinpoint that on anyone, but she's the one who solved it.
Nice.
And I, as in character, I'm like, oh my, you have solved it. Nobody has ever solved my riddle before. You gain all these benefits and you're so brave and this and that. And you could tell she was beaming, absolutely beaming. And I couldn't wait to tell her parents that story. Like, she spoke in Draconic. She actually did it. But she chose a fighter. She very often in game, like I made a mistake and I was like, oh, I think it's just Fang. That's her character. It's just Fang who actually climbed up the wall. And she'll be like, no, George is here with me. He did it too. I'm like, oh, thanks. I'll update my notes. Thanks, Fang. But she does and I think part of it is because what I've heard from therapists is that when you have a D&D character, it's not you.
Yeah.
It's them. So you're once removed from the situation. So while she would be very uncomfortable, like talking to anyone maybe in real life, it's not her. It's her character. And like Fang is outgoing, and Fang, so she is one of those people that is playing an aspirational version of themselves. Which is pretty fascinating. So if you were very experienced and you were trying to teach kids some social skills, or if you were actually a therapist who used D&D in a practice with kids that have, different neurodivergences, there are so many creative ways in which you can help them, especially in the social skills area.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of like an extreme of this would be like the theater club, like the kids who are willing to stand on stage and have others see them. And this is like a step back from that. It's still a lot of improv, like, which is a great, I mean, I've heard, I don't know any direct experience I've had around this. Well, with kids, I've done improv. But the improv is used also as a tool for kids who are trying to come out of their shell, or to relate to people, to have more pro-social skills in general. And this to me is like, what a fun way to include fantasy and then to be side by side with people on a journey that's ongoing. So I'll see you, is it every day or every week that you guys meet?
Every week, yeah.
Okay. So that like consistency, I imagine, is just another, there's the safety of the group, but then the safety of like, I know I'll come back to this next week. It's like something to look forward to, and just having those kind of anchors, I think, in your life as a kid are huge.
I think so too. It is. And it is like the more they play together, the more they start to trust each other. And the more there is a lot at first of the kids like, well, I want to be the hero. I want to be the one that solves the puzzle or climbs up the wall first, or hits the monster with the most damage. But they do eventually learn that the most important thing is just succeeding. And they start to look at each other's strengths. And so they'll be like, well, actually, you're really good at climbing and you're really good at animal handling. So you could probably, they're trying to say, bring a baby dragon back to its mom. So like, it would make sense for you to approach the baby dragon first, even though like, I want to hang out with the baby dragon, you know, but no, we want to be successful. So it's really good to see them develop those strategic and analytical skills and like kind of step back for a minute and realize I don't always have to be the center of attention. Sometimes I can help. I can just offer the assist and we can all be successful.
Yeah. This is so amazing. Yeah, there's so many different directions I want to go with this. I think it was like corporate environment, the people needing to learn about trusting each other in collaboration and
it
being
is the ultimate
focused.
Yes, the trust. This is the new trust exercise.
Right. Yeah. I had this question, and maybe it's already been answered, but maybe let's address it. The idea that like if a parent has concerns about the violence that is inherent in the game because there is so much fighting that's part of it. It's not always that. But what do you say to parents who might have that concern? Like, oh, I don't want to teach my kids that like, you know, shoving a sword into another living being is like how you're going to operate in life.
Exactly. Because you're also not magical. So this is a really good
there was
question.
that early movie too, wasn't it, with was it Tom Hanks, or there was some
Mazes and Monsters?
Yeah, where like they kind of tried D&D in real life and it went bad. It was like, oh yeah, you can't actually do this in real life.
Well, so this is a good question and something that I definitely take very seriously because myself as an animal loving adult, it is very well known in my D&D party that if there's anything that resembles a dog, I'm not fighting it. I will not. I will walk away from this fight. To the point where like actually any animal I have a hard time with, but I had a dungeon master once. We were about to end. He ended it on our session on a cliffhanger and we were going to fight this big shark. We were playing in Spelljammer, which anything can happen in Spelljammer. It's in space. There's an astral sea. And he's like, you know, this shark that's been a menace for years and years and years. And you've been hired to go up against Mama Shark. Well, I guess when he said Mama Shark, like I had a reaction. Like I don't even really remember having it. That's one of the advantages of playing online is that everyone's face is right in front of you. So he very clearly saw me like, ooh, like flinch. He said to me afterwards, he's like, hey, I noticed that you seemed a little uncomfortable when I mentioned that we were going to fight Mama Shark or Big Mama. Her name was Big Mama. And I'm like, I guess, I don't know. I think I just feel bad because she's a mom. If she's bothering people, like maybe it's because people are bothering her or nobody helps her out around the house. She's overworked. I'm like, can't we help Mama Shark instead of? So he is like, I get it. Okay, whatever. He's like, I'm going to make up something new. We're not going to fight Mama. Her name will not be Big Mama. It will not be a her. It won't be anything. It's just going to be like a gooey, oozy, weird monster. Great. I really appreciated that. So one of the things that I do with the kids in the club is the first thing is I send an email to their parents introducing myself and all the volunteers, and I give them a brief overview about what D&D is and then lots of resources if they want to keep digging into it. And then I ask if they are comfortable sharing, if they know of any known triggers that for their kids. They want to share, please share. Like if your kid is terrified of spiders, we're not going to go to the Underdark where it's teeming with spiders. We just won't do it. Or if your child loves spiders, then I'm not going to bring Lolth up and like have the party go up against the Spider Queen. Okay. And some of them do share things, and some of them, you know, most people are just like, oh, I never know, nothing. Great. On the first day of club, and I make all the dungeon masters in the club do this, we spend a few minutes right before we do anything and we talk about safety tools. And we make it very clear that if at any time during this adventure, because we are telling a story that we don't even know yet, we have no idea where the story is going to go. We have no idea where somebody's going to take it. And we don't know the things that could potentially be upsetting or scary for the people around this table. Everybody has fears and things that make them uncomfortable. If at any time we go anywhere close to that territory that makes you feel uncomfortable, here's a number of ways that you can let me know. We give them index cards that have an X on them. They're called X cards. This is like actual safety tools that the RPG community has come up with and shared. I just write an X on an index card because sometimes kids aren't comfortable saying, "Hey, I'm uncomfortable." You know?
Right.
But if this is just a little flag that they get, they can just put that card out. I see it. We stop and we go in a totally different direction. We never ask why. We don't have to speak of it again. You don't have to explain. And I think that just puts them at ease. So far, I've never had a kid raise their X card. But it's there, and I want them to know that, and I make it clear, like, you don't have to tell me. If you're not even comfortable doing that, you can get up and excuse yourself. You can walk away. You can tell me afterwards. You can tell your parents afterwards, and they'll tell me, and we will never, go near that again. That's fine. What I have also noticed, because there are some D&D published adventures that are actually written where you can be as successful, if not more, if you don't enter into combat. It's very reliant, because role-playing is obviously a big reason why people love this game. It's all puzzles, it's all interactions, it's all role-playing. And if you do decide to go into combat, it's not going to go well for you. Like, it just doesn't work as well. So I have plenty of those interactions up my sleeve as well. If like they like to roll dice. So if there's, we can role play, we can solve puzzles, you can try to persuade someone to do something. You don't always have to pull out a weapon. Matthew, they always want to pull out their weapons. Ain't nobody role playing in our D&D club.
And that's how I was. I have drawings. My brother sent me these drawings that were left in my parents' house since the last 50 years or whatever. And it's like Minotaur throwing sword into other man's chest, and he's like gushing blood. And I'm like, was I had to explore something there, and that's in a safe environment. If it's just my imagination, then that's the best way to explore it.
Yes. And I do sometimes ask them, like, well, describe what happened when you did this. And they're, pretty tame about it. There's always like something about their butt, like, oh, his butt blew off and it landed over here. It's like,
that's
okay,
very
violent.
Whatever. Yeah.
Very violent. But the rest of them's intact, but not his butt. But they do like to like get in it.
Yeah.
The only exception is, like me, if it's animal-like in any way, they will always try to tame it. And then it becomes their familiar, or their part of the party. Like last year, our club ended up with, like, we had 2 huge guinea pigs, we had an octopus, like we had so many, like bring all your animal companions too. I had to do so many different voices, Matthew.
Oh yeah.
But they're so fun to play with.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I love all these examples. What another question here, and we're getting close to the time I had allotted for us, so we can find our way to closure soon. But what are the commonalities you would say among the kids, especially, that seem to get the most social and emotional benefits from playing D&D? Like, how would you describe them, or what do you notice about them?
I think D&D should be required in all schools because of its social and emotional and educational benefits. But the ones that have the opportunity to join a club or experience it in their classroom, they are from all walks. So this will be interesting to somebody who's played D&D years ago, like you. There's more girls than boys in the club.
Oh, interesting.
Both years. This year it's a little bit closer. Last year it was definitely like more girl. Like my whole table was girls, with the exception of one. But they are kids who love sports. They are kids who love music. They are kids who love books. They are kids who just, I don't know, their parents signed them up and they ended up actually really liking it. But
Yeah.
they're kids.
Yeah.
They just love to do everything. The ones that I think I've noticed the biggest change or the biggest benefit is I have two very, very shy sisters. They're
Mhm.
twins, very shy, like painfully shy.
Mhm.
So again, I was like, well, how's this going to work for them? Because again, we talk a lot in this game. One of them was in my group. The other one was in my husband's group. The one in my group named her character Brave,
Mm.
which like just pulled at my heart. Like, really?
Mhm.
Because I think you just want to be brave. So she just
Mhm.
named her character Brave. And she was one of the most creative and clever role players, often like to the point where by like week 8, every time they had to talk to someone, they were like, well, we're just going to have Brave do it. Just Brave's good at this.
Oh,
I
wow.
think hearing for 8 weeks that you're
Mm.
good at talking and interacting with people, like
Yeah.
there's that really changed her. Like
Mhm.
her mom told me as much. We're like, we do see a change in
Mhm.
both of them. Her sister was very just like in your face, like you messing with me, like she was always the first one, like she's like, let me at him, I'm gonna get this guy. Like she just like would even she like punched a zombie in the face once, and it was like the story that the table like I can't stop talking about, which made her feel like, pretty powerful, to the
Mhm.
point where my husband was like, if Maya joins the club again, I want her at my table. She's
Oh.
amazing. But her sister like was really, I felt like you actually saw like, her become empowered,
Mm.
and she would like, lean over and strategize with someone. Like these kids were not necessarily friends when they
Mhm.
started, but they definitely had that bond when they
Yeah.
left. I saw them walk out of the club together, like still talking about the
Mm.
game. And then I would see them sometimes at school before our next session, and they would run up to me and they would be like, we were just talking about D&D, and we have a really good plan how to get out of these sea caves. Wait till you see it. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see it. This is amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really special. So I
Yeah.
do think like the kids that maybe like struggle in some area,
Mhm.
they find a way in D&D without any prompting, without any guidance. They kind of naturally find a way to all of those
Mm.
confidence boosting, those social emotional things. Just
Yeah.
a way to try out like what is it like to talk to a guard and try to sweet talk passage onto this ship, for me and my
Yeah.
party. What is that like in real life? And who knows? Maybe she'll have an opportunity to try that out.
We talk
Here,
a guard one day. You
we
never
live in
know.
Seattle. There's a port here. You don't know.
That's so beautiful. It's really touching to hear that. The way what I especially like is that it's not led. Like that, you can create a situation which that's naturally going to happen. A kid will find a place for. Guess I would say it. They would find a way for themselves to practice something that's not normally practiced, a way to lean into what they may think is a weakness and
Yeah.
to find evidence of the opposite. And sometimes maybe that they're actually really good, that they have a talent that they didn't even realize and they've been
Yeah.
holding it in.
Yeah. And
That's
like I
beautiful.
don't even if they're not successful, like even
Mhm.
if like she tried to sweet talk the guard, she rolled deception or like whatever, and she didn't roll high enough to do it.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter. Like she's
right.
just like, oh, well, you can do that and not be successful, and
Mhm.
life just moves on.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you
cool.
still have this group that cares about you and wants to, you can care about. And
Yep,
that's, I mean, I don't know what better life lesson there is to be less
exactly.
goal oriented and more like I'm here with my peeps. That's what
Yes.
matters most.
Yep. I'm here with people who love and support me and
Yeah.
want me to succeed, and we're all helping each other get there.
Yeah.
And if all else fails, you can always just blame the dice. It's not
Yeah.
you, it's the dice.
Yeah. Right. There's always that luck factor.
Yep.
Um, well, this has been so sweet. Any last word for you to say, especially to these are going to be fathers, parents in general listening to this. They might be curious about, well, what could I do to help if I have a child that's maybe a little more reserved, or just in general, my kid might enjoy this? What are
Yeah.
some of the steps or anything else you want to share with them?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm curious, if the people listening maybe are like you and have played D&D in the past and are like, "Whoa,
Mhm.
that's still a thing, huh?"
Yeah.
It will come back to you. So
Mhm.
there are wonderful entry points to get back into D&D. I would say if you're curious, if you and your child want to start playing again, definitely check local game stores if you have any nearby. They
Mhm.
often have D&D nights and
Mm.
they're very intro friendly and you can just jump in without a character, without anything. Just go, show up and see what it's all about.
Yeah.
They also may have a night or an afternoon that is specially geared towards kids,
Mhm.
which is a great way also to get them into it. Check with your school. They may already have a D&D club. They may have a couple of nerdy parents that started a D&D club.
Mhm.
And if not, maybe you want to start one or talk to the librarian or see if there's a way to start it. It's really, really just a great thing to have in schools. But there are plenty of resources online. There are free resources. Playdnd.com is a great place to go.
Mm.
Like how this game has evolved in 50 years or exactly what it is. And there'll be tons of resources there for you. There's even free adventures that you can just download and I this is the one that we're playing in our club right now. You need no experience as a dungeon master. It's actually written to teach dungeon masters and players at the same time.
Oh, cool.
And if you have show notes or something, maybe we can drop that link of where people could
For
find it.
sure.
But
Yeah.
that's a really good family-friendly adventure, and we are having a ball with it right now.
Mm. Oh, awesome. Yeah, D&D as a family, that's a whole other concept.
I know, right? It is. It's family game night.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, Shelly, thank you so much for this. I'm enjoying seeing you as a writer on the Substack platform. We'll put these links. I may just ask if you can email me some extras
Of
and we'll throw
course.
them in there. And yeah, thanks again for today. It's been a fun conversation.
Thank you. As you can, I'm sure, tell, it's my favorite subject.
Yeah, and I won't tell your boss that it's easy.
No, never. Hard work all the time.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you.